Hi everyone, I'm Claire Saffitz. Welcome to my home kitchen. Today we're gonna go outside and bake some bread in the outdoor oven. Harris and I have been making pita bread. It is so much fun and it's a pretty straightforward dough. I'm gonna show you how to make it, and having an outdoor oven is just like the coolest thing in the whole world. If you wanna adapt it at home, I will give you some tips for baking it in your home oven. Pita generally is a style of flatbread. Some styles have a pocket, some styles don't. So we're gonna make one with a pocket. I think because of the kind of like technical challenges of baking in a really hot oven, it's not a type of flatbread that people generally make at home, but it should because it's so much better fresh than it is from the store. When you cook pita, you put it into a really hot oven and it's rolled out thin. And so what happens is the outsides kind of set and like firm up, and then because of the heat of the oven, the interior, which is still wet, creates steam and it makes that puffing that creates the pocket. So the ingredients are really straightforward. It's like basic bread technique. So I have some bread flour here. I am cutting some of the white bread flour with some whole wheat flour for flavor and also a little bit of texture. I have some instant yeast, water of course, kosher salt, and then I'm adding to the dough a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of honey for a little bit of sweetness. The only other things I have is like a little bit of extra oil because we're gonna like use it for coating the dough and the sheet tray, and then a little extra flour for rolling out. It's a special equipment. I have just a bowl. I'm gonna do the dough by hand. You could do it in a stand mixer with the hook, but when it comes to dough like this, I really prefer by hand because it's so tactile, and when it's in a mixer, it's like I'm not touching it. It's harder to tell for me if it's done. And then behind me, I have a sheet tray, some parchment paper, a rolling pin. Well, obviously I need the rolling pin to roll out the dough. This is essential. Bowl scraper, you're gonna need this. I have some individually cut pieces of parchment that I'm gonna use to sort of separate the dough after it's rolled out so I can like easily bring it out to the oven. And then I also have a peel. Whether you're bread baking indoors or outdoors, for most people I'm sure it's indoor, having a peel is really handy. This is gonna help us transfer the dough into the oven. And of course I'm gonna be cooking this outside in our wood burning oven. If you are doing this at home in your home oven, you are going to need like a baking steel or baking stone. It's just gonna work much better that way. Pita needs a certain amount, it needs a good amount of moisture in the dough because it's that puffing action of the moisture that's trapped between like the two outer layers of dough that puffs and makes steam, and that creates the pocket. So this is a 70% hydration dough, meaning when you take the full amount of flour by weight, 70% of that is the amount of water that you use. So I'm gonna start by combining my bread flour, and we're using bread flour because we want that good amount of gluten development. But bread flour has higher protein content. More protein means more gluten. Then some whole wheat flour. And this is enough to make 8 portions of pita. I'm going to add my salt. Obviously it depends on how large you make the portions of dough and how big your pita is. Then I'm adding my instant yeast. I'm just going to combine this. I was so surprised when we made this for the first time how well it kept overnight. Fresh bread at home is such a joy, and like this was one where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's like this fun to make this dough, and the dough was really easy. So now I'm gonna add my water. This is just room temp water. If you're working in a cooler kitchen, it's like a little warm in here today. If you're working in a cooler kitchen, you can make this like ever so slightly warm, like lukewarm. Okay, then I'm gonna add this is 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a tablespoon of honey. A lot of times you'll see recipes that have just like sugar, which is fine. This kind of gives something for the yeast to feed on and jumpstarts the fermentation a little bit, and it adds like a very, very mild hint of sweetness in the final dough. So whenever I'm mixing dough, I don't start with my hands, because if I were to touch the liquid and then touch the flour, my hands are just gonna get coated and like so sticky, and it's gonna be very hard to work with. So I always use a bowl scraper, like a flexible piece of plastic, to help to incorporate all the ingredients. In bread making, this tool really becomes like an extension of your hand. And I always do the liquid ingredients in a well. It just keeps things from like getting extra stuck to the bowl when you're mixing. So if you're doing this in a stand mixer with the hook, you can, and you'll just do the same thing in the bowl and turn on the mixer on low to get everything incorporated. This is a 70% hydration dough, which is relatively high. And it just means that the dough is going especially in the beginning, going to be pretty sticky. So that's okay. I'm going to teach you a technique for handling a wetter dough. So I have everything well incorporated. I still have some kind of shaggy areas. I'm going to scrape this out onto my bench. Make sure you get everything out of the bowl. And I am not really going to add any flour to this at this stage. So I'm going to keep this bowl around because we're going to use that. I'm going to get everything off of my bench scraper, bowl scraper. So now I want to start to knead this. But again, if I were to knead this like I would bagel dough or dough for like cinnamon rolls, it would just immediately, like once the flour is incorporated, start to stick to my hands. So there's a technique called slap and fold. So this is a technique used for working a wetter dough. It looks dry at this point, but what happens is the flour really starts to hydrate and it will pretty quickly become really sticky. So you can see it's already starting to stick to the surface a little bit and to my hands. So once we get to this step, this is where we're going to start that slap and fold motion, and it is exactly what it sounds like. I am going to, and I'm just using this to kind of keep all my little bits contained. You're handling the dough quickly and kind of like flinging it off of your hands, and it does help to prevent sticking. So it's just, this is how you work a wet dough. So I grasp the dough, I'm gonna slap it onto the surface, and then because it's wet, it's gonna have friction with the surface and sort of adhere and then fold it onto itself. I'm turning kind of how I'm gripping it. I give it a 90-degree turn, I slap, and I fold. The dough right now looks kind of gnarly and it's not smooth and it's irregular. This method is going to really rapidly develop gluten and it's going to smooth out. So I'm just going to keep doing this. You're going to be here for like a good, I would say solid 10 minutes. Like you can see it's so crazy sticky. And what's going to happen is that flour is going to absorb. The gluten's going to develop. It's going to become less sticky. It's going to smooth out. It's going to become more elastic. And we want a good amount of development of the dough. So I'm just going to do this for a while, and we'll come back in 10 minutes and take a look at how it's transformed. So that motion again, it's like slapping, kind of pulling it toward yourself and then folding it back over. And every time I pick it up, I'm picking it up and giving it a 90-degree turn. And I can tell that it's already starting to firm up. It's become more cohesive. And I'm just going to keep doing this until I have something smooth and firm and a little less sticky. I've only been doing this for maybe 5 minutes or so, and you can see that the dough is much smoother and much less sticky. Like when I grab it, it's not sticking to my hands. But I need to continue with that slap and fold motion. I need a nice amount of gluten development. So we are going to oil the dough and then we're going to flour it so there won't be any sticking. So this is just about done. A lot of it's visual, but a lot of it too is just how it feels. So the dough has firmed up quite a bit. When I poke the dough, it should feel nice and firm, and see how it's springing back. So this is like a nicely developed dough. When I say development, I'm talking about amount of gluten development. So now I want to gather this into a nice smooth ball. Make sure you scrape up any dough that's stuck to the surface. I'm using the bowl scraper to push the dough, like tuck the dough underneath itself, and that helps to create this nice tight high dome. And you can actually see the gluten strands kind of stretched over the dough. So now I'm just gonna wash my hands and rinse out this bowl. So we're using a little excess olive oil just to coat the bowl. Then I'm also going to coat the surface of the dough. You don't need to sprayer, you can just like smear it in with your fingers. And now this is gonna go into the bowl, like rounded side up, oiled side up. So now I'm gonna cover this. We want it to be airtight because the surface very easily dries out. And we want to let this sit at room temperature until it's about doubled in size. And there's a teaspoon and a half of instant yeast in here. So there's like, I wouldn't say it's a large proportion of yeast, but it's enough that the fermentation at like a normal room temperature will happen in the next hour or two. So we'll keep an eye on it. I'll just kind of look through the side of the bowl. One helpful tip that a bread baker told me once is take a photo of what your dough looks like in the bowl so that you can refer back to it as it's like expanding in size as a reference. All right, I'm just gonna put this over here. All right, we'll come back when it's risen. So here's my dough. This has been rising, how long has it been? An hour and a half, maybe? About an hour and a half. So you can see that it's grown quite a bit. It's about doubled in size. We are going to now get this out of the bowl and portion it. It's oiled, so it's pretty easy to handle. So we're just gonna scrape it out. Now we want to divide this into 8 equal portions. I didn't mention, as a piece of special equipment, the kitchen scale. I'm going to weigh the portions. You don't need it. You could just eyeball it into 8 portions, but I'm going to go ahead and weigh it so I know each of them is exactly the same. It's about 125 grams per portion. So I'm just going to start with using my bowl scraper, just dividing pieces of the dough and weighing. All right, 124, 126, close enough. So I'm just gonna do this and portion out my 8 pieces of dough. And I know that it's 125 because I didn't add any additional flour while I was kneading the dough. So it's like pretty exact at this point. This is called dividing the dough. Now we're gonna do a kind of pre-shaping where obviously if I rolled out one of these pieces, it would be like irregular and it wouldn't have a kind of like shape to it or even surface tension to like maintain that shape. So we want to form each of these portions into a nice, smooth and tight ball. So what you end up doing, the best way to do this, I think, is kind of pick like a flat surface and then turn it over. And you can see there's like all these little rough edges, and we're gonna just gather everything toward the center. And I'm gonna pinch together all of the sides. So you have it like this, it's like a teardrop shape or a garlic bulb. So I like to pinch all these edges together, and the dough is pretty wet, so it has no trouble sticking to itself. And then it goes back onto that seam. I rolled across the surface with my hands. You see I have this nice smooth tight ball. And this just helps me so that when I go to roll it out, I have something even and rolls into a circle and looks really good. So I'm gonna get that on my baking sheet and I'm gonna repeat that process with the remaining portions. I'll show you again. So like, here's a piece where like I have this little extra piece I stuck on there. Sometimes I'll tuck that piece in. So it's like find a kind of flat surface to the dough, get it on that surface, and then bring in all of your edges and bundle everything up together. So I pull up all those edges, pinch them together, make my little garlic bulb, then back onto the surface, rounded side up, seam side down. And there's a cupping motion with your hand. So your fingers are in contact with the surface. The palm of your hand is kind of like cupping the dough. And it's a rapid circular motion. And it's the friction between the dough and the surface that is causing the dough to kind of stretch over itself and make this nice, even dome. So I'm just gonna repeat that with all my other portions of dough, get them on my sheet tray, and then it's just gonna get covered and it's gonna go into the fridge. So this is a step that you can do the night before if you don't wanna do all of this the same day. The first couple times I made this, I did it all in the same day, but I still stuck it in the fridge because it's just a place where it can hang out until you're ready to bake. You could let these rest covered at room temperature on the sheet tray for 15 minutes and then roll them out and bake right away. But the cold rise is helpful for 2 reasons. One, it helps you time your baking. So it's like you can really leave it in the fridge until your oven is prepped and you're ready to go. So it gives you some flexibility on timing. And then the other thing is it improves flavor. So to give something yeasted time in the fridge, it just lets a lot of like flavors develop. So, and it will also improve texture. So there's just you have every reason to like plan a little bit ahead and let it chill in the fridge for at least a few hours. So I'm gonna finish shaping all my portions. Then I'm going to give it another little spritz of oil to prevent sticking, cover it with plastic, get it into the fridge. Okay, so here are my 8 dough blobs. They have continued to rise a little bit in the fridge. I'm gonna save this plastic. I'm gonna put this behind me because I'm gonna roll them out one at a time. So here for your rolling out setup, you want your rolling pin. This is some bench flour. It's a mixture actually of the bread flour and a little bit of the whole wheat. You can use any kind of flour. And then I have some individual pieces of parchment paper that I cut because I'm going to place each rolled out piece of dough on its own slip of parchment paper. That's gonna help me transfer to the peel and get it in and out of the oven. So I have that, and I'm gonna stick this behind me and just grab one piece at a time. So using a bowl scraper, starting with a little bit of flour at my surface. The flour is going to prevent sticking. So again, it is like a wetter dough. If I were to roll out without flour, it would definitely stick, but you can be generous with the flour at this stage because it actually only facilitates in the kind of like drying out of the surfaces, which then helps with the formation of the pocket. Don't go crazy because then you can dry it out too much and it becomes brittle, but you can be somewhat generous with the flour at this stage. Now the dough is easier to handle when it's cold. So I put it rounded side down and then some more flour on the bottom. And now we want to roll this out to a kind of scant 1/4 inch. And that ends up being about like an 8-inch round. I have a thing where it's like, I have actually a weirdly hard time rolling things out into a circle, at least when it comes to bread dough like this. So mine are always like a little bit oblong or just slightly irregular. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfectly round for it to make a pocket. So keep hitting it with a little flour if you're getting any sticking. And because the dough is so well rested, it shouldn't really spring back on you. You shouldn't have that problem, but if you are having that issue, you just give it a little extra pressure with the rolling pin. Okay, so this looks good. I'm gonna get this on my parchment, a little flour on the parchment as well. Okay, and now I'm gonna kind of keep that covered with just another piece of parchment just to keep it from drying out too much. And now I'm gonna repeat that process with the 7 remaining portions of dough. So same thing, a little flour on the surface, grab my ball of dough, round it side down, a little extra flour. I like to use my fingertips to just start to flatten it a little, and then rolling pin, about a scant 1/4 inch. You really don't want to go thicker than that because at that point, you don't really get the pocket formation. I want to work pretty quickly because the whole point is that these, once they're rolled out and they're at room temperature, these are going to start to proof. So it's a short proof, maybe like 20 minutes or so. So as soon as they're rolled out, I'm going to take everything outside. I have my peel right here. It's underneath the sheet tray. I'm going to grab an extra sheet tray plus a kitchen towel because that's an important thing. After they bake, they need to be covered so they kind of steam. And we're going to start baking. So the oven has been prepped. I have some coals on the oven floor to make sure it's really hot. So I'm going to actually sweep the ash away from the floor. And now I'm ready to bake. So I have my setup here. Sorry, it's kind of low. I have a folding table here. I have my pitas that have been rolled out. I have a little bench flour, and then I have a second sheet tray for landing the baked pita and a towel for covering. So what happens is the outside of the pita really almost like crisps and dries out. And we cover it when it comes out so that all the steam that's trapped inside gets kind of like reabsorbed by the outside of the dough and it like stays soft. It's so good. So I'm gonna grab my peel. I have some extra bench flour. I like to flour the peel a little bit. I'm going to start by taking the pita that I rolled out first because that has been proofing the longest. So I'm gonna start on this side and just take out like piece by piece. And I am baking these one at a time. In a bigger oven, I could do multiple, but the thing is they bake so incredibly fast at this high temp that it's almost too hard to like juggle multiple going at the same time. So one at a time, it's like about all I can handle. Here's a really important tip. I'm going to actually flip the pita over onto the peel. And that's not only gonna help me like remove the parchment, but it also helps to create a pita that is more evenly baked and has walls that are the same thickness. I learned this in donut making. Like if you let a donut proof and you put it into the oil the same direction that it proofed, all the bubbles are at the top and you get like a air pocket at the top and like a denser bottom. So it's like by flipping it, you're letting the air, by flipping it, you're letting the air kind of like even out in a sense, all the bubbles, and so you get more even walls. Okay, so I'm gonna get this into the oven. And I'm gonna set it right in the center. And what happens is I peek through the door because there's like cracks in the baking door. And as soon as it has fully puffed, the whole thing is gonna puff up like a UFO. And then I'm gonna flip it and the whole thing like takes less than a minute. I flip it maybe just 10 more seconds in the oven to like set on the other side and that's it. So it slides right off the peel, the baking door goes on. So while this is baking, I'll tell you how to do this at home. You want to get your oven extremely preheated to the highest temperature that it will go. In most oven that's like 500 or 550. You can do this on the floor of your oven, which tends to be hotter. So you can take all the racks out, put your baking stone on the very, very bottom of your oven, blast it as high as it will go, preheat it for like a good 45 minutes, and you're gonna do this process. It's just gonna take longer to bake. Something that takes less than a minute in this oven is gonna take more like 2 to 3 in your oven at home, but you're gonna follow the same process. So now I'm gonna flip it, and I just use the tongs to flip it onto the second side, and like 10 more seconds on that side. I'm gonna grab it. Oh. This one has like a decent amount of ash on it. All right, so that's gonna go, oh, don't look at all the ash. And now I'm gonna cover it with the towel. There's a lot of variables with live fire cooking, how dry your wood is, the temperature, blah, blah, blah. Hi, Ringo. Hi, kitty. Okay, let me go grab that cat. Get over here, kitty. Come here, kitty. Come here, kitty cat. You're so naughty. You're so naughty. Come here. Come here, kitty. Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. Let's go back inside. So let's try again, this time with a hotter oven. Same thing, I'm gonna push the coals out of the way. Ow, jeez, that's hot. So I'm gonna pull this one out. Everything's gonna go onto my second sheet tray with the towel. Oh, it's puffing. It literally like inflates, looks like a balloon. I think it probably could be hotter, but I think it'll, obviously that one worked fine. As soon as it's like fully inflated like a balloon, that's when you wanna flip it. Put this back on. In 10 seconds, I'm gonna pull that one out and we're just gonna like get one in, cook it, take it out, put the next one in. So here's the one that just came off. There's that nice edge that's charred. What I should be doing is when I flip it is give it a little rotation because the back of the oven is the hottest part. So it has that nice char and it's just like, it feels so light for its size. So we're just gonna keep that covered so that it kind of steams and stays soft. And on to the next one. Get it onto my sheet tray. So now I think we're at a good temp. Get one in, cook it, take it out, put the next one in, and we're gonna cook the rest. They are so light and like literally like feels like a pillow. I wish that the whole thing was just got more color. I think like the oven really could have been probably like 50 to 100 degrees hotter so that I got some of that color development and charring while it was baking. I'm not actually filling these. I made some tzatziki, like a Greek yogurt cucumber dip with a lot of garlic and dill. I'm not actually filling the pocket, but this is a great thing to fill because look at the pocket. Ooh, it's so soft in the interior. What's so brilliant about pita is it has this smooth, cooked, almost crispy outside, and then it has this pillowy interior. So when you fill it, it like literally like will suck up all the juices, but the outside will kind of like maintain its integrity. It's just such an amazing bread dish. It smells so good. The textural contrast, like biting through the kind of dried exterior into the soft, pillowy interior is like so satisfying and delicious. And on its own, it has really nice flavor from the whole wheat. These keep really well. So just put them in an airtight bag, store at room temperature. A day or two later, they'll still be nice and soft, but they also freeze really, really well. And if they become stale after a couple days, brush them with a little olive oil and bake them in a hot oven to make your own pita chips. So I am going to enjoy more of the pita and the tzatziki. I want to say thank you for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.